Hey, it's George back with another WeatherWise tutorial. This one is going to be on how to use the satellite during the tropical season. Now, of course, as we all know, the tropical season is beginning to wake up, of course, with Hurricane Aaron and maybe even more activity behind it. So we wanted to take a video and educate you on what exactly the satellite is, how WeatherWise satellite options can benefit you, and why you should use them. We'll also look at how WeatherWise has implemented the National Hurricane Center's cone and limit warnings to try and give you an early heads up for any activity that may be occurring out in the oceans. So without further ado, let's go ahead and hop into the video. So let's start with pulling the WeatherWise radar up. So I'm going to go up here to my browser, type in web.weatherwise.app. And now we've pulled the radar up. Of course, you can access the WeatherWise radar on your phone by downloading it at any of your app stores. So now that we have the radar open, we'll see there's a bunch of colors happening, but let's turn our attention to the Atlantic Ocean, where we see there are a number of colors happening out here. So let's break this down real quickly. In the red, here we have the tropical storm warning. Now, for the sake of this video, I do want to quickly turn these off so we can kind of clean up the radar here so it's a bit easier for you to view. Now, real quickly, I want to show you how to do this. Going up to the triangle, we're just going to real quickly hit the eyeball there, and that turns off all of the warnings. Now we have a bit more of a clean look to start to dive into this tutorial. Now, first up here, before we actually get to the satellite, I want to talk about how to identify the earliest signs of any tropical disturbances occurring. Now, you'll see on the radar here, we have some yellow blobs. They're actually referred to as lemons, if you will. And this allows us to identify where any tropical disturbances may be occurring. These are issued by the National Hurricane Center days and sometimes weeks in advance of a tropical disturbance developing. So I want to click on one. We see down here in the bottom, we clicked on that yellow there. And now we have the odds displayed of a tropical disturbance occurring. So in 2 days, 0%. And typically with each passing day, those odds will go up unless the storm system kind of just falls apart. So I want to click on this and just kind of briefly show you that it has a brief breakdown here, again, provided by the National Hurricane Center that's been implemented into the WeatherWise radar. Of course, you can read that at your own discretion. We have another limit up here inside of the actual cone where another tropical disturbance may develop in a few days. So now that we have learned what the yellow polygons are on our WeatherWise radar, I want to talk about the cone of uncertainty. Basically, this is an area that the National Hurricane Center has identified as a tropical disturbance that is ongoing. And this cone is trying to project its path as well as its time of arrival and some other cool things. Now, I will tell you the National Hurricane Center does update this every 6 hours. This is not going to be 100% perfectly accurate. That's why they updated it every 6 hours. So make sure you're constantly checking back every 6 hours to see what updates may have been added or any changes that may have occurred. So I'm going to click on this cone, and we'll see that this is referring to Hurricane Aaron. And now I want to kind of just click on that and show you what all the options are here that we have on the WeatherWise radar. So first we have the big breakdown from the National Hurricane Center. But let's say I didn't want to scroll through all that, and I just want to jump to each section. I can actually go up to the top here and click on forecast discussion. And that's where I have the nice breakdown there, key messages, so on and so forth. Wind speed probabilities, you get the idea. But let's say I actually wanted to put some of these things on the radar and just kind of visualize them. Well, this is a really cool tool. I can go up here to the top, and let's say I wanted to look at the odds of 58-mile-per-hour winds occurring or greater. I'll click on that, and you'll actually see that the National Hurricane Center's forecast is now displayed directly on the WeatherWise radar. But wait, George, there's no numbers that pop up here. How do I know what these colors mean? There's no key. Well, it's real simple. I'll scroll into an area, and I'll click on it. And now I know that orange area, or that dark burnt brown, whatever your eyes may want to tell you the color is, has a probability of a 90% chance or greater of 50 knots of wind or 58 mile per hour if you're using that metric. Now let's say I wanted to look up here toward Bermuda, so I'll click on one of these greens, and I'll see that they have a 5 to 10% chance of 58 mile per hour winds occurring or greater. Now you may be thinking, George, I don't want to see the winds. I want to see what time it's expected to arrive. Well, first, let's go up here and turn off the wind projection, and we'll see that it cleans the radar back up. We'll go back in, go up to time of arrival. Now, I'm more of a straightforward person, so I like the most likely option, but you can click either one. And you'll see that it quickly displays the time of arrival that is expected by the National Hurricane Center at each line. Now, again, this does update every 6 hours, and to be honest, the times change quite often. So let's say I wanted to look at the forecasted wind radius of the hurricane. So we'll go back in, and we'll click on the forecasted wind radii. Now, this is a really cool display here that shows you where the strongest winds are projected to be, as well as how wide the wind field may actually be. So the very faint yellow on the outside is the projected wind radius, the overall width of the winds there. And in red is where we're expecting the strongest of the winds to be. Again, all of this data being provided by the experts at the National Hurricane Center, implemented into the WeatherWise radar. Let's turn that off, and I want to show you something else really cool. We can actually overlay a few different things here if we wanted to. And I'll show you what I mean by that. Click on the cone here. Let's say I wanted to look at the earliest reasonable times, and I wanted to look at the wind speed probabilities. Well, I would just click both of those on. And now I can see what time the highest of the winds are projected to be and where that might actually occur, because the cone has now displayed this. Dark, burnt orange, or brown, whatever you want to call it, lines up between Sunday at 2 p.m. or a little bit before that, and goes all the way to about Monday at 8 p.m. So I know these winds are going to be rocking for a solid 36 plus hours, because we have the cone of arrival and the wind speeds overlaid here. So let's turn all that off there. Go back into the cone. Just uncheck earliest reasonable, as well as going back in and unchecking the wind speeds. So now that we have the different aspects of the cone uncovered, as well as the lemons explained, I want to talk about what these different numbers are on the actual line of the hurricane here. So we have H3, H4, H3, H2, H2. Basically, this tells us the projected strength of the tropical disturbance. So in this case, a hurricane category 3 goes into a hurricane category 4, goes back into a hurricane category 3, down to a hurricane category 2, so on and so forth. Hurricane categories go from 1 through 5, so that's kind of the scale on how those rock and roll. So now that we have all the information from the National Hurricane Center identified, let's talk about the satellites. So I'm going to go up here to the top and navigate to the satellite here, and now we see we have all these fancy colors starting to pop up of different activity occurring. But before we start talking too much about the satellites in different regions, as well as different tools to use, we need to first learn what the satellites are and how they work. So there's GOES East and GOES West. Those are the satellite names. And what does GOES stand for? Get ready for this. Geostationary Operational Environmental Satellites. Big old fancy name for big old fancy satellites. Together, GOES East and GOES West provide a comprehensive view of the Western Hemisphere, enabling forecasters to track storms, monitor wildfires, and provide data for a wide range of weather and environmental applications. Now, there are two versions, of course, East and West, and it's exactly what it sounds like. GOES East basically satellites and covers the eastern portion of the Western Hemisphere, so the Atlantic Ocean, as well as the eastern portion of the United States and central portion of the United States. Now, GOES West, oppositely, covers the western portion of the Western Hemisphere. We're talking the Pacific Ocean, as well as the western portion of the United States. Now, of course, most of our tropical disturbances come from the eastern portion, so we're going to use GOES East in this video. So now that we know what the satellites are, we're going to talk a little bit more about which regions of the satellite we should be using. Now, I'll show you what I mean by that. Let's navigate to our Dropbox, click it open, and you'll see we're on GOES East, or GOES West. There's where we could change that. Now, if we click this Dropbox open, we'll see there's different regions of the satellite we can look at. So let's break this down. CONUS is basically exactly what it sounds like. It's a satellite that covers the continental United States. Mesoscale 1 is a very small region satellite, but it does give us a very, very, very high definition look here, as we can simplify onto one area. And basically this covers the main action region within the main development region. So let's zoom back out here. Mesoscale 2 is actually going to be able to show us what's occurring in the Midwest and the upper Midwest of the United States, where most of our storm systems on land really get their act together. So again, a small region that gives us a very high resolution look into what the clouds are doing in that region of the country. Zooming back out once more, Let's go ahead and look at the main development region. We'll see this is the area where most of our tropical disturbances actually get their act together, get formed, and then move into either the Gulf or up the Atlantic or through the Caribbean Sea. Now, I do want to tell you this is going to be the main sector you look at for anything tropical. Going back into our Dropbox here, we'll go down to the last three. Central America covers the Central America portion of the area, and South America covers the South America portion of the area. Now going back in here, let's click on the final option, which is full disk. This is one of my favorites to look at because it's so colorful. But look, if we zoom out, we'll see that this covers the entire goes east sector. We'll see that actually as of the time of recording this, the sun has not risen all the way through the Pacific Ocean. And that's the reason for the cutoff here. But a really cool view into the actual full display of the goes east satellite. Oppositely, we can go back in and we'll see that goes west full disk covers the full view of the goes west satellite. See how it doesn't reach all the way to the Atlantic, but it goes more into the Pacific where the sun has not risen, or shows the full view of the goes west satellite. So let's go back in here, click on goes east, and now for this video in particular, we're going to focus on the main development region. Now we've zoomed back in. We've got our main development region satellite on of the goes east sector. Now for the final portion of this video, I want to show you the full potential of WeatherWise radar. So I'm actually going to switch over to the radar that I have customized on my own WeatherWise account. So it might look a little bit different here. Again, this is just because I've put some custom things in here. We'll have a video of that in the future. And I made it look how I want it to look. But it's still the overall same application and nothing is different, even if yours looks different. So I'm going to set back up, click on satellite up here, and I'm already on the main development region, zooming in. And now let's go ahead and look at what WeatherWise really has to offer us and a few of the top tools to look at when tracking tropical systems. So as you can see in the top here, I have subscribed to WeatherWise Pro. Of course, you can get all this through WeatherWise Plus and the free version as well. But there are a couple of cool things that you can get access to if you subscribe to WeatherWise Plus and Pro. Now, enough beating around the bush. Let's talk about the most useful tools on the satellite to use when tracking tropical disturbances. So going back down here to our drawer, I want to show you starting with Red Band 2. Now this is a tool that captures detailed cloud structures during daylight hours, and it's pretty useful for observing tropical cyclone formation, eye wall development, and convective patterns. It is a high resolution visible imagery up to a half-kilometer resolution, and it's excellent for daytime monitoring of storm organization and intensity in the main development region. So basically what all that mumbo jumbo means is that this is a really useful tool for identifying how the clouds are acting during the daytime. Now you cannot use this at nighttime because once the sun goes down, this satellite cannot see. But if we zoom in here, we can see the hurricane pretty clearly. I'm going to use the drawing tool from WeatherWise here. You can see the swirl as well as the actual eye. Now, this is undergoing some weakening to undergo an eventual intensification process, so the eye isn't as clear, but I want to put this into motion here and go back into the history a little bit and show you the progression and actually show you the eye of the hurricane. So I'm going to go down into my Dropbox, turn up the max frames from 15 to 100, and we're going to go all the way back here. I'm going to hit play here. It's loading up here in the top. And I'm going to pause it before it actually gets going. You can see the sun is down right now because we went all the way back to about 8 p.m. last night. And I'm going to take this bar and scroll it across here. And something really cool we're going to see together is the sun actually rising on the WeatherWise radar. Wow. And I'm going to stop it right there and scroll in and look at this look of Hurricane Aaron. Again, we have the swirl happening. And now you can very clearly see the eye before it really got into a weaker state. Putting this into motion here, you'll see it's gotten a little bit weaker because it's undergoing that rapid intensification process. But before it does that, it actually has to fall apart a little bit. So again, this satellite is basically displaying to us everything that we need to see during the daytime. So I'm going to stop that, pull it back to our current present view here. And now you're probably thinking, George, what if it's nighttime and I want to look at this thing? Well, let's go ahead and go back into our Dropbox. go up here to band 13, which is a clean infrared long wave window that can look at this hurricane at nighttime. You can use this at nighttime, during daytime, and we can also use this to measure cloud top temperatures to identify areas of deep convection and strong storm intensity. So let's do that. Let's go ahead and navigate down to our inspector tool. You'll see our inspector tool has popped up. Zoom back in on Hurricane Aaron here. We'll see there are actually some cooler clouds on the eastern side of the hurricane eye wall there. Some warmer clouds on the western side of the eye wall there. And of course, some very warm clouds on the western side of the eye wall. If I zoom in a little bit more there, again, where some of the strongest intense portion of the hurricane actually is. You'll notice that if we go over the eye of the hurricane, that's where some of the cooler clouds actually take place because there's not a whole lot actually happening inside of the eye wall of the hurricane. But again, this satellite actually helps us to identify where warmer and cooler clouds are. Again, cooler clouds indicating that maybe not as much activity is happening. Of course, the warmest clouds indicating some of the deepest levels of convection. So turning our inspector tool off and resetting a little bit, I want to take you to what I think is the last most useful tool here of the satellite sector, which is called Band 8 or Upper Level Tropospheric Water Vapor. Big old long name. Zooming out a little bit here. Basically, this allows us to track atmospheric moisture and upper level dynamics such as jet streams and dry air intrusions, which influence tropical cyclone development. Basically, what I mean by that is, if you look up here at the key, on the right side is your drier colors, on the left side is your more moist colors. And you'll see we do have a pocket of dry air far north of the actual hurricane's position right now. But near the hurricane, there is almost no dry air occurring. Now, why is that important and why is this useful to tracking hurricanes and one of the more useful tools? Dry air works to make a hurricane or tropical system a little bit weaker or give it a harder track toward intensification. So dry air interrupts the intensification process. Warm and moist air contribute to the intensification of a tropical disturbance. So identifying where any dry air pockets are in front of a hurricane is really important to understanding where a hurricane may begin to fall apart. Now, of course, there are other aspects to it, but dry air is one of the biggest ones. And you'll actually see it in real time here. So we actually have no dry air in the way here. So using the drawing tool once more, you'll actually see that the strongest of the hurricane potential is right here, where no dry air is present. Up here where a little bit of dry air is present, you'll see it actually ticks down and ticks down. So that is why identifying where dry air pockets are, how strong the dry air is really important to understanding where a hurricane's intensity might be its peak before it falls apart, and so on and so forth. So again, this is one of the more useful tools within the satellite toolbox. So those were probably the 3 most impactful satellite tools that you can use right now. Again, eventually in the future, we will make a video going over every single one of those in depth. But for now, for a general overview, those will get the job done for you. We also talked about the National Hurricane Center's polygons and cones of uncertainty, and I hope you found it all useful. I'm George, your WeatherWise tour guide, if you will. Until next time, stay safe, y'all.